Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Ocean Lab's special live broadcast straight from the super remote waters of San Ignacio Lagoon, Mexico. Today, we'll embark on a journey to discover the awe-inspiring world of one of the ocean's most majestic creatures, the gray whale. A quick special thanks to Mike Lever and Nautilus Expeditions, as well as Baja Expeditions, for all of the help and support. Today, although we planned on being oceanside, we have unfortunately had some inclement weather, so we are just a little bit further back from the water. We will be talking to a couple of amazing researchers about the incredible 14,000-mile round-trip migration between the Arctic and Mexico that the gray whales make every year. Here in the protected waters of the San Ignacio Lagoon, they find refuge to breed, to give birth, and to nurture their young. We're going to meet up with these researchers super soon. Just a reminder, we are coming to you live from a very remote part of Mexico, so if the video looks a little bit lower quality than your favorite TV show, that's why. We welcome your questions. Just submit them by using the Q&A icon on the bottom of your screen, and we will try to answer as many of them as we can. All right, I'm going to turn it over to our host, Dr. Chris Lowe, and our marine mammal biologist, Dr. Gwen Goodmanlowe.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Chris Lowe. I'm the director of the Shark Lab, and that's right, I study sharks. But we're here in beautiful San Ignacio Lagoon, and it's a little windy today, so we couldn't go out in the water. That doesn't mean the whales aren't here. We're going to show you some amazing footage, and you're going to learn all about gray whales from Dr. Goodmanlowe, who's a whale expert. She studies marine mammals, and marine mammals are different from sharks.
Better.
No,
Even
not
better
better.
than sharks.
They're
Yeah.
cool. I have to say they're pretty cool. But they're very different, and she's going to tell you all about them. So, San Ignacio Lagoon is very unique, right? So animals make a big migration just to come here.
That's right. So gray whales in particular come to San Ignacio every year in order to give birth. So and also to mate. They go back and forth. So they do a really long migration down to San Ignacio. And although we're not in the bay today, if you could see it, you would see that it's a very protected body of water. It's relatively shallow, higher salinity, the water's warmer, and it's considered to be a nursery ground for gray whales. So the moms are pregnant for a long time, over a year, and they come down here and they give birth to their babies called calves, so that they can be in a protected area for a month or so before they start heading back north. So San Ignacio is very special in that way as this gray whale nursery ground.
So these lagoons are very large, and I can't even show you how big they are. Trust me, when we're out there, it feels like you're on the ocean. But as Dr. Goodmanlowe said, it's very protected waters. So why do they come down here to give birth? And it seems so shallow here in many places. Isn't that unusual for a whale to use such shallow water?
Well, in fact, the gray whale is actually a coastal species, so they prefer to be in shallow waters. So other whales give birth by themselves, solitary. They swim in the ocean or farther out, deeper ocean. But gray whales are coastal species anyway, so they like the shallow, protected bays to give birth and and have their calves. So so that the calves are actually protected from predators in here. And it's nice and shallow, so they can't actually dive too deep. When they're here.
So when they're in the lagoon and they give birth, why do they give birth in the lagoon? Is it all just about protection, or is it provide shallow water? It's easy for babies to get first breath.
Yeah, definitely shallow. Like I said, by salinity. Like I said, protection from predators. So all of those things make this a really unique and special place for whales to give birth.
But they're not actually eating here, right?
They might be eating a little bit. Yeah. So normally, in the past, gray whales were particularly eating up in Bering Sea, where their food is really plentiful. But they've been noticing in the last few years that they are doing some feeding with their lagoons, and we're not really sure why. They don't feed a lot down here, but they can feed opportunistically while they're down here. And the shallowness makes that a great place to do that.
So unlike whales that we might think about that are out in the ocean, like blue whales or humpback whales that are feeding on schools of plankton and fish in the water, gray whales are a little different, right?
They are really different. So gray whales actually feed in the mud. So they're mud suckers. You can consider them mud suckers. They go down to the bottom. For some reason, we don't know why. They particularly like to be on their right side. So they'll turn over on their right side. They put their heads down, they suck the mud in to their mouths, and then they push the blood and water out, and they'll right, which are something called message and crustaceans. It's on the inside of baleen, which is what they consider. They'll push everything else out, and they will scrape the baleen with their tongue, and then they swallow that food. So why we do this on the right side is because well before we had underwater predators and things like that, when we would find great whales or great skeletons, see the right side is much shorter. And that's because the sediment is really coarse and kind of like sandpaper. So they're feeding. Yeah, they're feeding on the right side all the time. It actually wears the railing down so that it's actually shorter on the right side.
So Kylie, I think we have some footage of gray whales feeding, right? So can you show that? So obviously they're getting a lot of food that are very small, but they have to eat a lot, right?
They do.
So, and if they're only snacking while they're here, they do a bulk of their eating.
So remember, they're going to the Bering Sea to get the bulk of their food. And gray whales and all baleen whales is that it's really seasonal. So they're going to a place where their food source is really amazing, and then they're leaving that place and they're going to another place to give birth usually. So for the gray whales, they have to put on all of their weight, all their fat stores while they're in the Bering Sea feeding, because they're really not going to do much eating for the rest of the year. After a few months in the Bering Sea, in the summer, they're getting all that good stuff, all that high energy stuff, building up their fat stores, and then they come down to the Baja lagoons, and their bodies are actually metabolizing that fat in order to get their energy. But then, they deplete their energy. They have to get back up there to the Bering Sea in summer to get their food.
So during that summer period, that summer holds Alaska or the Northwest, they're feeding on all those amphipods and they're building that fat layer, but that forms this layer that also acts like insulation.
Right.
So this is the
And the upper layer is amazing at insulating these. Fat is really insulator. It actually makes them a little bit slower. It slows them down a little. So it's really buoyant. It makes them really like having those arm floaties on. So if you've ever tried to swim with a life jacket or arm floaty on, it's actually hard. So it's hard for them to do that. But there's a trade-off between staying warm with that blubber layer and also being able to be swimmers. So for example, the gray whales are not the fastest swimmers in the ocean. Baleen fins can be pretty fast and they're pretty powerful. But as far as speed goes, they're not going to be the fastest ones. That blubber layer.
So when they get down here, they've already used up some of the nutrition that they've stored in their blubber. And now the moms have given birth to a baby. They got to feed that baby.
They do.
What are the babies?
So babies eat milk, just like it. They are mammals.
They are mammals.
They're breathing air. They're getting milk from their moms, and moms are metabolizing that fat to produce that very fat-rich milk. So, for example, gray whale milk is about 53% fat, whereas human milk from mom is about 50 to 51% fat.
So
it's highly fatty.
But I 2% my cereal.
Yeah, that's because you don't want to gain weight like baby.
Okay.
Do you?
So
Or
how
like
much?
Baby gray whale.
How much gain?
So they can gain up to 9 pounds an hour.
What?
And up to 50 to 60
An
pounds
hour?
a day. Yeah, they have to because they have to get big enough in order to get back north after when they start the migration north. So the moms and the babies are going to be the last to leave the lagoon. So the mom wants to get that baby as big and strong as she can before she starts that 7,000-mile migration back up to Alaska.
So she's still nursing.
She's still nursing.
As they're heading north.
Yeah, 7 to 9 months.
Wow. So by the time you get to Alaska, they're ready to feed on their own.
Not quite, because that's 7 to 9 months. So they're here for maybe about a month, give or take. And then it's a couple months migration. So you figure they're migrating in mid to late March. They're going to get up there in the summer. That's only 3 or 4 months. So by the time they get there, it's 2 to a couple months. So they're still nursing up there while the mom is feeding, and they're probably learning how to feed at that time.
So they're starting to learn how to catch amphipods on their own, how to do the bottom scoop.
Right.
But then what do they do the next year?
The next year, they some of them come back down here because it is warmer in the summer, winter. But they also, some of them may stay there. And there's a population that actually does not feed that far north because of competition. They feed to the coast of California and Oregon, things like that. But not all of them.
Okay, so they're marine mammals.
Yes.
So they have to come to the surface to breathe.
Yes.
So how do they do that? Is it different than us? Like when we go, I go snorkeling and I have my snorkel and I dive down.
Yeah.
I can only dive so deep.
Right.
How deep can they dive and how long can they hold their breath?
So because they're coastal, they don't dive deep, so 100 feet, maybe 200 feet. They can hold their breath for minutes. In general, it's, for especially for the babies, 3 to 5 minutes. But they can hold their breath for up to about 30 minutes. I mean, I can hold my breath in water for about a minute. So that's a pretty long time that they can do that. And then they come to the surface, they take a breath, they exhale just like we do. We exhale, we take a big breath in, and then they go back down.
So when they exhale, they're exhaling through what?
Oh, they're exhaling through their nostrils, which we have a little diagram here, little animal. So our nostrils are here on the front of our face. If you think about a cat and a dog, if you think about a seal or sea lion, they're kind of on the front of their face, but they're moving up. But whales are really unique in that over evolutionary time, their nostrils have migrated from the front to the top of their heads. The reason why it's like that is so that, like, when they're swimming, they don't want to waste any energy, right? Because they have to use those energy stores that they built up. So they don't really want to waste energy, doing anything. And so if they were a normal animal, like a dog or a cat, they would come to the surface of the water. They'd have to go like that. But this enables them to just go that breath as they're swimming, and their nostrils open. They exhale, and then they take a breath in, and then they swim, and they keep doing that.
I heard they make this cute heart-shaped little exhale pattern when they do that.
They do. So if you look, if you can see that real close up, I don't know if you can. So there's two groups of whales, baleen whales and toothed whales, dolphins. And the toothed whales and dolphins have, we all have two tubes, if you want to call them, coming from our lungs that go to the top. Toothed whales and dolphins, their tube forms one hole. So they only have one hole. But baleen whales still have the two different blowholes, but they're like nostrils. And so what happens is when they exhale, you get a condensation that comes out because it's two blowholes coming like that. The condensation kind of goes up and around, and it looks like a heart. So they have a heart-shaped blow.
So I think
Happy Valentine's Day.
Exactly. I think we have some footage of that. Can you show that, Kylie? Okay, so I'm used to sharks swimming, right? Our sharks swim with their tails like that. They go back and forth. These animals now have something called a fluke. It's not really a tail like a shark.
That's right.
So how does the fluke work? Tell us about the fins.
All right. So if you look at this model again, so like as Chris said, the shark fins are more like this, going side to side. With marine mammals, their tail is up and down, and so they have really strong muscles attached to their spine. That the spine has really tall projections here. So they have muscles on the top attached to the spine and muscles on the bottom. And so normally, like if you're swimming, you kind of do a stroke like this, and you have power on the downstroke, and then you kind of move your arm, and it's not a lot of power going this way. Nobody really swims like that, right? But they're very powerful. So they have power going on the downstroke, but also power going on the upstroke. So they're very, very powerful swimmers. And so that's also good because they don't have to give off a lot of energy or use a lot of energy to swim because it's easy for them. It's not one stroke kind of thing.
And how do they steer?
So the flippers on the front of the animal are kind of related to our arms, and they actually have bones that are like our arms and then like our fingers, but the finger bones are really long, flat, and that gives them a high surface area to volume ratio. What that does is that gives them more. It's really not for propulsion or for forward. It's really more for steering. So they can actually turn them this way and that way, and
Ah.
it allows them to steer a little bit better. And they can, turn around. Yesterday, we were able to be on the water. We saw them rolling in the water and
Right.
things like that. They're doing it both their tail and also their.
So this is for steering, for ability, and this is
Pretty
for
much,
power.
yeah, pretty much.
So actually, they look like they're sluggish. They can go fast enough to actually launch themselves up.
They can. So first of all, they're kind of torpedo shaped,
Yep.
which is really streamlined in the water. But they can launch themselves out of the water, and that's called breaching. They can also put their heads out of the water, and that's called spy hopping. So they have essentially two kind of behaviors like that.
But to swim fast enough to launch their massive body out,
Right.
it takes a huge amount of force,
Yes,
right?
it does. Yeah.
So breaching, we've actually seen some breaching. So Kelly, I think you have some footage. Can you show that? Okay, so you also mentioned something called spy. So what's that?
Well, let's go back to breaching for a second, 'cause
Okay.
I didn't really explain it.
Oh,
So they launch out of the water, and then they kind of splash down. And people don't really know why they do that. It could be a play behavior. Some people have said that maybe it's to get rid of parasites, but it's a real active, like fun behavior. And it's great if you're watching to see breaching, because that's what the most exciting thing is. They also have spy hopping, and that's where the whale hears the water. The whale just kind of comes up. So swimming, it comes up like that. So right about to its eye level. Sometimes the eye is above the water, sometimes the eye is below the water, and then slowly it just sinks back down. And they don't really know the reason for that. They used to think that that was so that the whales could like see the land for navigation. But what they found out, in fact, is that whales, especially gray whales, don't have great vision.
I was gonna say their eyes are pretty small.
The eyes are pretty small, and underwater their vision is good, but above water their vision is not so good. And also they're doing it out here when they're not migrating, so they don't really need to be navigating when they're in the. So some oceanographers came up with the theory that maybe when they come towards the surface, they can actually hear the waves breaking better, because they do actually have an ear. The ear is embedded in their blubber. It's actually in their skull, but they don't have opening like me, but they do have an inner ear with, very similar structure to our inner ear. They can hear really well. So now they think that maybe it's because they're hearing, the closer they get to the surface, they can hear the waves better. So they might be hearing the waves to figure out how far away from the coast they are. They could be listening for boats, because yesterday when we were out there, it seemed like they were checking us out. I felt like.
I know. You know
So-
what? You have to take a look at some spy hopping. Kylie, can you show some spy hopping so the kids can see what it looks like?
It also could be that they're looking for other, animals to mate with. So we actually don't really know, but it's a bet that they're also looking for other whales to mate.
So yesterday when we were out, we did see some whales kind of together, right? So there were
Yeah.
a couple whales right next to each other, maybe 2 or 3. What could that be about?
Well, they are intelligent animals, and they
Okay.
do have to find each other for reproduction.
Okay.
So the smallest reproductive group is going to be 3 whales. It's going to be 2 males and a female. And what happens is the 2 males are going to vie for dominance. In other words, the strongest, biggest one is going to be able to do the mating with the female. And so they usually have 2 males. And the reason why you need to have 2 males is because, remember, they are air breathers. And so the other male is going to help keep the female buoyed up to the water so that she can breathe. And so you have these groups of 3, sometimes more animals are doing that. They're kind of vying for dominance when they do that.
That's helpful.
Yeah, very helpful.
Yeah, yeah.
So they're helping her to help the female get some rest while she's mating.
Okay, that's very cool. So now, I guess my question is, they can also have like built-in sonar. They know the products. How do they do that?
Well, what do you mean?
Well, so whales can echolocate, right?
Baleen whales do not.
They do. So
No.
which ones do?
Okay, so the toothed whales and dolphins are echolocation.
Okay.
Now, baleen whales actually can produce echolocation sounds, but they don't have the apparatus or the structures in their skull in order to hear the sounds back. And the reason is they don't really need feeding, right? Because most of the baleen whales are eating large, huge schools of plankton. They don't have to hone in like dolphins do on, or sperm whales on a specific, individual prey. They're just looking for big things in the water. So that's why they don't really need good vision. They don't really need echolocation or sonar. So they don't really use the sonar for feeding or for anything like that. But the toothed whales and dolphins need it.
But I also heard they're not big singers.
They're not big singers.
So the other baleen whales are big singers, right? Like humpback.
Some of them are.
Yeah. So why aren't they big singers? They have bad voices.
Yeah, really bad voices. So the humpback whales are actually known to sing because what they're doing is they used to think it was to attract females.
Okay, makes sense.
Here's my pretty song. Come mate with me, come hang out with me. But in fact, what they found was that whenever they recorded songs, there were no females actually near them. It was actually a way to keep the other males away. So that was their thing of dominance. I have a better song than you. I'm a safe way. But gray whales don't really have a feeding system. They do produce sounds, kind of grunts and chirps and things like that, but they don't actually sing songs like baleen whales. Got it. Humpbacks. Humpbacks are really the ones that are known to sing songs that we can hear, and that's why they make CDs out of them, and, so that you can actually listen to the songs.
Very cool. Yeah. So one of the things that we did see yesterday was whale would kind of come up, go like it was going to dive, and sometimes when it did that, its tail came out of the water.
That's true.
What's that called?
So that's called fluking. And
is that just a fluke?
It's just a fluke. So what happens is, so when the whales want to dive deeply, so normally they're kind of going like this. They're not going to be able to dive that deep. So they need to have the propulsion, the power of that tail. So what happens is they'll start to dive deep, and then they'll use that tail. The tail comes out of the water, and that helps them dive down really deep. So when that tail actually comes out of the water, kind of curves a little bit like that, and that's called fluking.
Oh, cool.
And when they do that, that means they're diving deep, and not only when they do that, you pretty much know they're not going to come up for maybe 15, 20 minutes.
So they're going down to do something.
Yeah.
So we do have some footage of that. Kyle, you want to show that? So we did talk a little bit about feeding. Let's go back to feeding. So these are not like teeth.
That's right.
They have
baleen, which is very similar to our fingernails. It's kind of something that's similar to our fingernails, and it's flexible. But the really interesting thing is that different species of baleen whales have different colors and patterns of baleen. By patterns, what I mean is the size of the sibs. So how close those baleen plates are together will indicate what they're feeding on. So it's kind of like a ball next to each other. So gray whales, in fact, have like yellowish white baleen, and the baleen is only coming down from the upper jaw. They don't have any on the lower jaw. Only comes down from the upper jaw. It's kind of like a curtain. And the way that they feed is, well, for gray whales, they're sucking the mud up, but for other whales, they open their mouth really, get in big gulps of water. So on the bottom ventral surface of the whale, you see these pleats, and these are called pleats. And essentially, what they do is they allow the throat to expand. Now, because gray whales are not taking in large quantities of water, they don't need their throat to expand quite that much, and that's why they only have 2 to 4 pleats. If you look at a humpback whale, they have 10, 20 pleats. That's because they're taking in huge quantities of water, and they have to expand their throat really high. Now, animals, the baleen whales that take in huge quantities of water, have a really cool mechanism, and that is they can turn their tongues inside out. And what I mean by that is the tongue is normally curved kind of like this, right? Your tongue is coming out, it's curved like that. When they're taking in those large quantities of water, it goes like that. And yeah, I can't do it. And it turns actually inside out, and that allows much larger quantities of water in there. And when they're pushing the water out of their mouth, not out of these plates, these are, they're not open to the outside. When they push the water out, the tongue pops back up, just like that, and it pushes them out. The water comes out through the baleen, or the mud comes out through the baleen. And again, the food gets stuck on the inside of those plates, and then they use their tongue to kind of scrape it off and swallow.
So I have a couple more questions regarding these zits.
That's me.
Oh,
Not zits.
sorry.
Pimples.
Sorry.
So, gray whales have a really interesting thing, and that is that they have two types of other animals that live on their bodies. One looks like these white round spots, and these are barnacles. And the other are these little orange patterns that are around the barnacles, and those are called whale lice. So the barnacles are because there's a barnacle species that only lives on gray whales, and the gray whales don't get any other barnacle species living on them. So they're species specific. They live together. And the barnacles are invertebrates, and what they do is when they reproduce, they give off these little tiny things called larvae that float around in the ocean. And then right when it's about time for them to settle down and settle on something and grow up, the baby gray whales are born. And so they settle on the baby gray whales, and they live on the gray whale for their entire life. Now, they don't live quite as long as the gray whales do, so they will get knocked off when they're feeding or in the cold water of the Bering Sea, but they will basically get bigger and bigger as the time goes on. So in January, when the babies are born, they're real dark and smooth and adorable, and they don't have any of these little barnacles on there. And then you see these little dots. The barnacles are babies themselves. The barnacles get bigger and bigger, and they form these groups of barnacles. The area gets bigger and bigger. They live there their whole lives. And they don't hurt the whale at all, but they benefit because they're filter feeders. So they're filtering things, plankton out of the water. And so as the whale swims, they stick their little legs out, and they're actually getting food from the water. And then that's how they feed. So there's no harm to the whales, doesn't seem.
Okay, just
Like-
other than being itchy.
Yeah, and the barnacles benefit. The little orange spots, as I said, are whale lice, and the whale lice can move around. They are not species specific to the whales themselves. So these whale lice can move around. So the mom, when she touches the baby, she'll transfer some of those whale lice to the whale, and they will cling on to the barnacles in order to stay on because the whale is moving and they don't want to get knocked off. And if you were ever able to touch a whale, you would probably get some whale lice hanging on to you as well. And they're really good, though. I know it sounds gross.
Yeah, that sounds gross.
But they're actually really good because they help get rid of the dead skin on the whales.
Okay.
And if there's a wound on the whales, they'll pick at the edges of the dead skin and they'll clean that. It's like having a built-in Band-Aid. Like
Okay,
a
sounds better. Sounds better than just the word lice
Yeah.
crawling around.
Yeah, but they're actually good for the whale.
So I think we have some footage of barnacles, and you got to see them because these are models, of course, but seeing it in real life, it's really cool. Show that footage, Kylie. So now, 100 years ago, or whales were hunted. Not just great whales, all whales.
Right.
Why? Why do people hunt whales?
So they figured out that the blubber was really rich in oil. And back in the day, before we had electricity, they needed the oil in order to light lamps, make candles, things like that. The baleen whales were also hunted for what they used to call whalebone, which isn't the bone, it's their baleen. But the baleen is flexible. And so what they did is they made corset stays out of them. So back in the day, women had to wear these things to make them attractive, and they wore these things called corsets that went around their waist and be cinched up really tight. And they had a really tiny little waist. It's really unhealthy. Really, really
I was going to say,
unhealthy.
it must have smelled bad too.
It did smell bad. It
Okay.
was really unhealthy. But the stays were flexible. They're
Okay.
almost like
Just like early plastic.
plastic. That's what I was going to say. So they used those around this too, because back in the day, also people did not like the sun. So everybody, or women especially, carried around umbrellas to keep the sun off their skin. And so they had this whalebone in there. So they used the blubber for oil and the whalebone for various products. They made margarine out of it, things like that.
Now, overhunting really hurt population.
Because remember, these whales, we didn't talk about this, but the moms only have one baby and not every year.
Okay.
They can't have enough energy stores to give birth to one baby at a time. And if they happen to have twins, they're not going to survive. So one baby at a time, and because their gestation or the length of time that they're pregnant is 13 and a half months, and then they have to
Take a year off.
take a year off because they're feeding the baby milk, right? So now we're up to 2 years. So it's about every 2 3 years cycle retention. And so because of that, when you kill whales, especially the females, it takes a really long time for the population to rebound because it's not like they can have quintuplets or every year or something like that.
So gray whales were thought to be on the road to extinction
They were.
by the early 1900s. What changed?
Well, we started protecting them. So we had the Protection Act of 1963. Mexican government started to protect them. These the fishermen came in and they said, okay, we see that this is a great resource. We don't want to kill them. We want to protect them. So they made an ecotourism thing where they came up with the regulations of how many boats could be on a whale at one time, how long people on a pump can be on the whale and things like that. So we have been protecting them for quite a few years now, which has allowed the population to rebound.
But despite the fact that numbers have been going up for the last century, they still have times when they don't do very well. Right?
That is true, and that seems to be related to the food source. So with climate change and El Nino and La Nina oscillation, what happens is their food source, which are these mice and shrimp and amphipods, they need that Arctic ice. They need that ice because the ice gives a little cover and allows the phytoplankton to grow, which their prey feed. And then when there's no ice cover, the phytoplankton dissipate. Their prey don't get their own food, and so then there's not enough food for the gray whales to feed on. And so we did have an unusual mortality event about like 2019 to 21. And what happened was we were finding lots of gray whales starving and dying of starvation, being completely emaciated, stranding, washing up to shore, and it was real scary.
So the phytoplankton are like microscopic plants.
Right.
They grow right underneath the ice.
Right.
And if there's no ice,
Then they're not
there's no
Yeah,
phytoplankton.
right.
Therefore, there's no amphipod.
right.
Whew, that's not good.
No, it's
Right?
not good.
So what are gray whales starting to do? And
They're feeding along the way, but it's really snacking. It's not really because the amphipods are in high abundance in a very concentrated area.
it's something like 12,000 amphipods in a yard.
I think
Like
it was even more than that.
That's
It's like
crazy.
100,000 amphipods in
Oh
a yard.
my
So
gosh.
you don't find that anywhere else. So they can snack along the way. They're also opportunistic feeders, so they can feed on other things. But those prey, they've evolved to feed on those prey for a reason, and that is because those prey are very energy rich. So they can take for their buck if they can feed on what they're supposed to be feeding on.
Okay, so I have another question. That comes back to the sea ice because the sea ice forms in the winter,
Right.
right? And then it's been really critical, but because the planet's getting warmer because of climate change, it's going to happen to sea ice.
That's a problem. Sea ice is melting. It's not forming big enough shelves. And yeah, so the less sea ice we have, the less food the gray whales are going to have, and then their population is going to decline because there's just not going to be enough food to feed all of the animals in the population.
So that's a problem.
That is a problem. Yeah.
So we did good by protecting them.
Right.
We're not killing them anymore. The
Right.
populations are starting to come back.
Not
Yay.
directly killing.
Right.
Right.
Yay.
Right.
But because of climate change, we're starting to put the population at risk.
Right.
So what can we do about that?
Yeah, what can we do about that? So how are humans affecting climate change, Dr. Lowe?
Driving gas vehicles, putting carbon dioxide in the air. Litter pollution's a problem too, right?
Burning fire plants, using electricity that's not solar, all of those things, everything pretty much that we do today is causing climate change.
So all those things
Everything.
are bad for gray whales.
Exactly. And not just gray whales, but
Well, like
species,
the
right?
ocean.
Yeah.
So, and for us, but
Yeah.
not good.
Probably not good. So, I mean, we have to develop technology. Solar is a renewable energy source, for example. So using solar power instead of, other types of power is good. But we have to really think about what we're doing. So every time we drink out of a single-use plastic bottle, for example, instead of using a reusable plastic, a reusable bottle, every time. So to make that plastic bottle takes energy.
Like this plastic toy.
Yes.
Made out of
plastic. Yes.
made
Made
from
out of
oil.
everything.
Oil,
Plastic
CO2.
bags are made from oil. Plastic bottles are made from oil. All of that. So every time you go to Costco and you buy, a flat of water bottles, think twice about that because you are actually contributing to the problem. All those single-use bags of potato chips and everything, all of those bags are made of non-recyclable materials.
So remember, there's a lot you could do to help the gray whales here in San Ignacio, and trust me, they're pretty cool to see. Now I'm sure there's some questions there. So Kylie, do we have any questions?
Can you guys hear
Yes.
me? Gwen and Chris, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Kylie.
Perfect. Perfect. To the viewers watching at home, we apologize. Like we said, we are in a very remote area of Mexico, and for some reason today, the Wi-Fi connection does not favor my end of the broadcast. We do, however, in good news, have a ton of questions coming in. So let's go ahead and start. Since we were just talking about climate change and gray whale numbers, Beth wants to know, how are the gray whale numbers doing now?
Are coming back. So I think the current estimate or the last estimate is about 18,000, which is pretty good because it had gone down really, really low for that. But they are coming back relatively slowly because remember, they don't reproduce every year. So it is a slow comeback. So it increased after we stopped whaling. Then we had mortality rates. They went down again, but now they are on their way back. And like I said, I think the estimate currently is about 18,000 for the Eastern Pacific population.
Good question.
Awesome. We love to hear some good news. All right. So Camilo wants to know, how do whales sleep without drowning?
Oh, that's a really good question. So they do a behavior which we didn't talk about really,
Yes.
and it's called logging. So what they do is it looks like a log. So they're just resting at the surface of they're very buoyant. So as long as they keep air in their lungs and they don't try to dive down, they're going to be able to float at the surface, and they can take a breath for about 30 minutes. So they'll take a little nap, take a breath after about 30 minutes. They stay at the surface and they just rest up there. Kind of like if you're like on your back in the pool, you can actually almost go to sleep if your mouth is towards, you can get a breath. So it's similar to that. Although they have a lot of blubber, so they can really easily stay at the surface.
Great question.
Cool. All right. Somebody in DC wants to know, do baby whales stay close to their moms, like my mom stays close to me?
Yes, definitely. Basically, the baby whales are really with their moms, right next to their moms for the most part until they are called weaned. And that is when the mom cuts them off and says, no more milk for you, you're on your own. And then they start to venture off on their own. But yes, they have to stay very close to their mom for protection until that time. So until they're about 8 to 9 months.
Hey, Kylie, don't we have some footage of a mom and baby?
Absolutely, we do. Let's go ahead and take a look at that.
That's pretty cool, huh? So I'll introduce Scarlett, who's a naturalist here. She's been working here for many years. Scarlett, tell me a little bit about who you are, what you do, and how you got interested in this.
Okay, so I'm Scarlett. I'm one of the naturalists here in San Ignacio, and I've been working here for 4 seasons already. And I always feel attracted to whales and all the ocean creatures. So I just decided to have a career, and I had to study a lot, but here I am.
So, go ahead.
Did you go to college?
I went to college,
What was your major?
sustainable coastal management.
Sustainable coastal management. Okay, so not marine biology.
No,
Wow,
What?
amazing.
What you're doing here is sustainable coastal, right?
yes, basically here what we're doing is ecotourism, and we also try to educate all our visitors We like to also tell the story about how everything started here with San Ignacio Lagoon. Here, some locals decided to have a co-management. That means that they have their own population. So it's very interesting.
So if you have any questions for Scarlett, please, now's a good time to ask.
This question's not directly for Scarlett, but I bet Scarlett could answer it since she's here so much. Andrew wants to know, do any predators like sharks or killer whales hunt in the lagoon where the calves are born?
So far, we haven't heard about attacks. Since I've been here, I haven't seen like an attack of orcas. However, one time they show up here, it was just four a small pod of orcas, but they were actually hunting dolphins. And they left. It was just one day. It was just an episode.
Did the gray whales wait?
No, actually, no.
They didn't care.
And I think because the orcas were quite small, and it was like a pod of 4 or 5.
Oh, and they're
Yes, maybe they were learning.
Yeah.
Yes.
and they're like, eat the dolphins.
Yes.
Good question.
I actually have a question for Scarlett. Scarlett, what is your favorite thing that you've ever seen in all your time working in the lagoon?
Good question.
That's a hard one. One time I was in a specific boat, and I don't know, for some reason, thank you. There was a whale that was scratching the baleen plates with the panga and was very gentle pushing it. Very, very gentle. And I just had that experience one time. And I think that's the coolest experience I ever had.
So it was brushing its brushing its teeth on the boat.
Basically.
Okay.
Maybe,
I had something in my teeth. I had
maybe
something
it's
in my
like my
baleen.
dog when my dog wants attention. It was like nudging the boat. Saying,
Yeah,
pet me, scratch my baby.
Yeah,
scratch
but
my
it was
skin."
very gentle
Yeah,
how
yeah,
the
yeah.
guy was doing it.
Yeah.
And I saw the whole thing. I saw the baleen plates, the eye was looking at us. It was
Amazing.
crazy. But that was a unique behavior of
One
that
of
whale.
probably many cool things you've seen.
Yeah, I have a lot of stories.
I'm sure.
Mhm.
Any other good questions, Kaylee? Kylie?
There's Chris, as we have learned, is notorious for messing up people's
I know.
names. We have a question. We have a question from Daisy. Daisy wants to know, do whales have conversations like people do?
It's a good question. So some whales do, yes. So they do communicate with each other for sure. Some whales have more communication than others. For instance, dolphins are really vocal and they communicate a lot with each other. Gray whales, as I said, they do have vocalization. So yes, they definitely communicate with each other. What they're saying, that's another question we can't really answer. But yes, they definitely communicate with each other, and they communicate with touch too. So they, their flipper on the mom or the thank you. Yes, they will touch, and that we don't know what they're saying, but that could be mom, I'm really scared, or mom, I just want to let you know I'm back. I took a breath, but now I'm back. Because remember, the baby whales can't dive as much and as long as the mom whales can, right? So the baby whales at the surface, the mom's going to dive down. She comes back up, and they have to touch. So yeah, a lot of communication.
Okay. So I guess that answers Katie's question, which was, what do whales talk about when they talk to each other? Sounds like we don't know.
We don't really know.
Are there any species of whales that we do know what they're talking about?
No.
Kind of. Well, sperm whales, they're starting to decode
Yeah.
their language
Yeah.
a little bit. So they're the first. We're starting to understand a little bit about what they're communicating based on their behaviors. But some whales are more vocal than others,
Right,
right?
right.
So others maybe
Yeah.
they like to touch.
So basically, in order to figure that out, for most of the species they know that about, like for instance, dolphins, what they do is they train them to do a behavior, and then they ask them a question, and if the behave, so like they'll train them to go to a red hoop or a black hoop, and then we'll ask them a question. So, did you have a good day today? Go to the red hoop is yes, go to the black hoop is no. So but they have to train them to do those behaviors first. So with whales, they're so big, they can't really put them in captivity to train them to answer the questions. So it's real hard to determine, the communication. What are they actually saying to each other or to us?
Very cool. All right. Jamal wants to know how many species of whale there are and what is the biggest species of whale?
Okay. Well, how many species of whales are there? That's a good question. I can't remember, honestly. Do you know?
14 species of baleen
Baleen
whales.
whales. And for tooth, there's a lot more because it includes the dolphin. The toothed whales actually includes dolphins and porpoises. So there's a lot more species of those. But the largest whale ever is the blue whale. That's a baleen. That's the largest animal that's ever been on Earth. Far larger than a dinosaur, even though we always think of dinosaurs as being really big. The whale is by far the largest. But one thing I do want to mention is that the largest, all the whales that have been hunted are actually smaller than they used to be historically. Because when we hunted them, we wanted the largest ones for all the oil and all the products. And then we hunted out the really large ones. And so when they mated, genetically, they're smaller and smaller. So when you see an estimate of how big a whale is, that's usually a historic estimate. And they're not quite as big as that.
A little bit of controversy over there. Gwen, the largest species of whale is definitely bigger than the largest species of shark, right?
Oh, yeah.
There we go.
Totally, yeah. And they're smarter, and they're cuter, and
I don't know about
they're
cuter.
way cuter,
I don't know
and
that.
they're way better, way
If
better.
you've ever seen a little pocket shark, they're so cute.
No, sorry, not buying it. No. Thanks, Kylie.
You guys can fight about that after the broadcast. We do have a couple more questions. Let's see. How do whales protect their young from predators?
Scarlett, you want to answer that one?
Me, I haven't seen it, but I know, and there's been reports in the coast of California that some of the, can I get it?
Yeah.
Let's imagine this is a baby. So sometimes when the group of orcas are about to attack the mothers because they know the mothers are weak and tired, so they basically, the orcas are trying to drown the calves, or sometimes the mother will try to put the baby on top of her and probably and also make them away, scare them away, the orcas. But one cool
Yeah.
thing that I know is that some guides from the coast of California mentioned that there's groups of humpback whales saving the gray whales.
Oh, really?
Uh-huh.
Oh, so they bring in the big cousins.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
So, and then you were telling me about sperm whales do some really cool.
Right. So sperm whales have a really interesting adaptation, and it's only found in sperm whales. They call it the Marguerite formation because it looks like a Marguerite daisy. So what'll happen is the sperm whales will actually surround the calf. So all the sperm whales are vertically in the water column, and they surround the calf. The calf's in the middle, and that way it's like a
Shield.
fence. Yeah, it's like
Wow.
a fence, and nothing can get in. They'll also do it horizontally on the water, and they'll have it in the middle. But I actually saw that when I was in Dominica. Some pilot whales came in, and pilot whales are real scary, and they'll eat stuff. And there was a mom and a calf there, and all of a sudden they were vertical in the column, and all of a sudden they all formed this ring around the calf, and those pilot whales couldn't get in. So that's only in sperm whales. So.
That's a great question. Cool behavior. So many things we still don't know.
I think sperm whales are definitely my favorite species. Sorry to the gray whales. All right, we have time for one more question, and this one is always my favorite. Do whales have
Yes,
feelings?
whales
Gwen?
definitely have feelings. How do we know? Well, when the whales were hunted, like gray whales did in Ignacio, they would attack the whaling ships. So they definitely were angry. And we know that they feel sad. Like certain dolphin species will actually carry their stillborn calves for many days, up to 3 weeks. They'll carry them around. So that's a sadness. So we have anger, we have sadness. The breaching, I think, is excitement and happiness. Woo! I'm breaching. So yeah, I mean, there's a whole bunch of different emotions, and we don't really know what they all are, but I'm sure they definitely have feelings.
Well, and whales, next to humans, have one of the largest brains of any mammal.
They do. They have a large brain, way larger than sharks, by the way.
I know, I know. They're not very smart, but they're so cute. But that big brain, they're highly social, they're communicative.
They are
yeah,
very empathic.
yeah,
Yes.
empathic, very intelligent.
So
yeah.
it
Yeah.
would make sense
Yeah.
that, you know, there's-
All right. Thank you everyone so much for tuning in today. That is unfortunately all the time that we have for questions. We so appreciate you guys tuning in, and we so appreciate you guys hanging in there with us while we've had both weather fighting against us and technology fighting against us today. So if you want to see any of our other shows, we have 2 more tomorrow, and we will send out those links. Otherwise, we'll see you guys on the next show. Thank you for tuning in.